Ashley Matković is the founder of Fusion Australia, the premium networking community for high-performing women in business. Over the past decade, she's built a community of thousands, hosted hundreds of events, and partnered with iconic brands like Maserati, Crown, and Barbagallo, all while staying true to her mission of redefining networking through genuine connection. A proud mom of 2 girls, Ashley is deeply committed to her own personal evolution, always seeking to expand her perspective, energy, and impact in business, in motherhood, and in the way she leads. Today, we're going to discuss Ashley's journey into plant medicine, her biggest integrations, and how this has impacted both her business and personal life. Welcome to the show, one of my besties, Ash.
Thank you for having me. Second time on the show. I'm honored.
I'm so excited, and it's a different setup this time because last time I think we did it over Zoom.
We did. We hadn't even met in person then, I don't think.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how we connected initially.
Wow, that is so, it's so wild. And this speaks into your business, right? Because it's like through your business, you probably met a bunch of your best friends, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely, because they're all on the same wavelength. That's what Fusion is all about, that high frequency woman. So that's who I'm looking to connect with personally as well.
From the first time I connected with you, I just loved your energy because I'm huge with energy. It's like energy is everything for me, and I just felt like this authenticity, this groundedness, really open and feminine, and I was like, I just wanted to be around you, and since then our friendship has grown so much, and we've just rode so many things together, and I'm just so excited about where we're both going with our businesses.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. You're absolutely sent from God. You're a soul sister, and I'm so glad that we connected when we did, because there has been massive changes and upheaval in my life since we met, and I think you've been through a lot of the things that I've been through, which we're going to talk about. And so it's just been so good to have you, just to be there and just to be the kind guiding soul that you are. So yeah, so grateful that we connected.
It's an honor. Honestly, it's an honor. So like we said, you've been on the show before. So if you're interested in hearing Ash's journey, we'll have a link to our previous episode where we can talk you through how you set up your business and those kind of earlier years. Today, I really wanted to delve into something so significant. When we initially started talking about doing this episode together and we talked about talking about plant medicine, I was immediately like, yes, number one, I have a little bit of experience in it. Like I've also done some plant medicine, but also because I think it is such a polarizing topic. And so I'd love to know what called you towards that.
When I had my first daughter 6 years ago, I had an awakening, and that awakening really spurred so many changes in my life. But from that point, I would say that, up until that point, I would say that I was very much in my masculine. I was the independent boss babe. I was heading up one of the biggest girl boss communities there were in Perth, right? I was just, and I didn't realize it at the time. I was so unconscious, but I was in my masculine. And I was like, I don't need a man to support me. This is pre-children as well, So I had all the time and all the energy to hustle and make it big in my business. And I got to the point where I had my first child and I had my awakening, and that's kind of where it all started to crumble. And I started to want to step more into my feminine, and I started to explore that side of me, being willing to receive and being willing to just more go with the flow. And that is when plant medicine came into my awareness. I'd never even heard about it before. And so I was staying up late. I remember watching YouTube videos of people's transformations, specifically with ayahuasca. I was drawn to ayahuasca. Never was drawn to psilocybin, still not really. It was always ayahuasca that was calling me. And they do say that the grandmother medicine will call you when you're ready, when the time is right. And so obviously I just had my first daughter, so I was in no state to go and do it. But I knew it was always there, and it was always a whisper. So anyway, I continue with the journey of becoming a mother. I have another child. I'm a mother of girls, which is such an incredible honor. And I start to question everything. My values really start to shift. Unfortunately, cracks started to show in my marriage. And I realized that our values weren't so aligned anymore. We met when I was 24 and I was now 32 at the time when I had my first child. I was just such a different person from then. We change and we grow so much, especially when you're growth minded and when you're actively trying to peel back the layers of your psyche and figure out who you really are. The marriage, unfortunately, broke down and we've separated about 18 months ago now. And so in the past 18 months, that's been another awakening and uncovering of, okay, where did I contribute to the marriage breakdown? Where did I not hold my boundaries strong? Where did I not communicate my needs strongly enough? And this is what you're all about, Mars. You're the emotional intelligence queen, and that's what I was really trying to step into, not being the victim, but being the person who takes, control of their life and understand that we are the creator. We are the creator of everything that we are seeing in our life. It's just a mirror, right? And so how did I let myself be in this relationship so long that wasn't serving my needs anymore? My children at this point are 6 and 3. And so I felt like it was a good time to perhaps explore the plant medicine that had been calling me. And I knew a friend who had done it in Australia. And I just reached out to her, and she said, there's a ceremony, retreat for ayahuasca coming up in a few weeks, and it actually landed on my birthday weekend.
Oh, tingles.
I remember telling you this, and I was like, and they say, don't go looking for the medicine, it'll find you when you're ready. And that to me was just a sign of like, oh, I'm ready, and it found me. I booked in, and then I remember sitting with you and a few other girlfriends, and I said, I had 2 words of the year. I always set an intention word for the year. The 2 words were embodiment and certainty. I wanted to move more from my mind to my heart, because I was really moving through life at that point through overthinking, always in my head. And I wanted to move through life more through feeling, through the heart, and open up that energy center. And my other word was certainty, because I've always, my whole life, I've been full of self-doubt, and it just got to a point where I was like, that's enough is enough. I'm certain in myself. I know who I am. I want to clear that from my system. And I knew that ayahuasca was calling me to help me do that. And so we were sitting at lunch, and our other girlfriend had also sat with the grandmother medicine, and I told you my 2 intentions. And you were both like, you need to make a list of everything that you want to achieve with this medicine, because it'll give you all that and more. And so I did. I went home and listed out, like, all these things came pouring out of me, all these intentions that I wanted for my life.
First of all, I just love everything that you shared, because I feel like it's going to resonate with so many women. Because even when you just recapped your relationship, like, I feel tingles, because it's very similar to what I experienced as well. And I love that you talk about taking like responsibility for our role, but a part of that is also we were different people when we got into these relationships, and we made the conscious decision to quantum leap in our growth, and we wanted to become the best mothers, the best wives, the best business women. And when that happens, there is that separation that can happen between you and your husband, you and your community, you and your friend group. Like it creates a lot of discomfort. And for a lot of women, as soon as that discomfort comes up, we retreat. We're like, okay, no, and I did that many times in my relationship, where I felt like I was moving forward and I felt like I could choose myself, but then I retracted because I could see the discomfort in him. I could see the discomfort in my current friend group. So I just want to acknowledge you so much for moving through that, because you were 24. Like, I don't think people understand how young that is. We don't really know who we are at that time. And if you are someone that's committed to growth, like who you are at 24 and 34 is like, it should be a world apart, So I just wanted to touch on that. The other thing that you mentioned was being in your masculine. So this is really cool because you probably didn't know that you were in your masculine.
Nope.
You just thought you were a go-getter.
Yes, absolutely. I was. Yeah.
So me too.
But to the detriment of myself as well. You know, I always said I don't need a man to support me. I'll pay 50-50, you know, and I think that, you know, you get to a point where you're like, what? Why? I don't, you know, as innately we do carry the feminine energy, and when that's suppressed, we're not living our truest life. So I think you can look back with hindsight and it's all like, yeah, you know, what was I thinking? But at the time, yeah, I truly thought that I was like this. My mantra was like, I'm a strong, independent woman and I can get what I want, you know?
Same.
Yeah.
Like I was the exact same. And that's rooted in a lack of self-worth. Like we don't know it on a conscious level, but oftentimes when you say like, look, and I remember presenting myself like that in relationship, like, look, I make good money. I can take care of myself. Like I thought that was a flex. And a lot of women still do believe that is this big desirable thing for them in a relationship. But the problem is a masculine man isn't going to be attracted to that. A more feminine leaning man will be attracted to that, because you have to have that balance. And so us fronting like, oh, I don't need a man. Well, the masculine wants to feel needed. So what kind of man are we going to attract? It's not that these men are bad or good. It just means that the dynamic is going to look a certain way. And then when we evolve and we realize, oh my gosh, I am worthy of receiving, because that's what it's about, right? On a subconscious level, when we're like, I don't need no man, part of that can be also like, I'm actually not worthy of receiving. I have to keep doing the output myself. I can protect myself. And that's from fear. That's from scarcity. Whereas when we learn to love ourselves fully and know what we are worthy of, we can recognize that, of course, I'm worthy of receiving. I'm worthy of being taken care of and cherished. And the only man that's going to do that is a masculine man. So it's been so interesting because there's so many similarities between our journeys. And so that was in your 20s, right? So in your 20s, you were more like, I got this. I don't need nobody. And look, there's stages of life, and that's cool. And I think we had fun. But then you realize that you can't run 100% of the time in that masculine energy, because you will burn out. And it lacks fulfillment for a lot of us, because that's not our innate nature. So I wanted to touch on those things of your journey, because I know that women can resonate with that, whether they're in their 20s now feeling like, yeah, that's me. What do you mean? I don't need no man. You will change, right? That perception of the world and of relationships will change, and just be open to it changing, because probably in our 20s, we thought that was the only view, that was the correct view, and that was it. And boy, was I so wrong about so many things.
Yeah, and even, you know, when I had my first child, I was still so hesitant to step more into that feminine. I was like, you know, she's not going to change our life. We're still going to go and do everything we want to do. And I got to a point where I was definitely like, I hit burnout. I remember I collapsed in our front yard one time because I was just so, you know, I think it was during COVID. I had my second child who was definitely sent to test me in this lifetime. And I just, that was my turning point. I was like, I can't do this anymore, and something had to change. And you know, if your partner's not willing to go on that growth journey with you, then there comes a time where you need to choose yourself. And so it came that time where I had to choose myself, and that was really the hardest decision that I've ever had to make. I remember I was sitting with my coach, and I was like, we'd been coaching for a few months, and she kind of knew that I needed to make the decision. And I said, you know what, something's going to happen, and then I'll realize it's the time to leave. I just got to wait for that thing to happen. And she was like, maybe the lesson here isn't that something's going to happen. Maybe the lesson is that you need to learn to choose yourself and make this the moment where you've actually chosen yourself, not being forced to do it. And that really hit. And so, yeah, I really did have to. I had to, and it's still challenging to this day, you know, because leaving a marriage means splitting time with your children, and that's still something I'm in the middle of reconciling and trying to, feel okay about. And so that's still something that's really raw. But anyway, we can get back into the plant medicine.
No, I'm so glad that you shared that though, because, and I love that we're having this conversation when you're still kind of navigating this, because a lot of times we hear retrospectively, and like we were saying, like hindsight 2020 vision, right? Like you can see everything so clearly. I just want this to land for a woman that is thinking, is this for me? Like, and she's not ready to choose herself. I want her to see you in the process of choosing yourself, navigating the choosing yourself, and putting yourself out there. Like, you're on a podcast right now discussing this, which a lot of people wouldn't do because it's hard. It's hard to do that. So I feel like this is just another demonstration of you choosing yourself and choosing your growth and choosing to move forward. And I want people to see that, and as an example of what they can do, and that, of course, we're kind of still in the messy middle of it, but beauty can still come through in those times. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that. I want to talk about the medicine for a second, because some people think it's amazing. Some people think it's like an escape. I've heard so many different perspectives on it, and I'm sure you did as well, leading up to your decision to sit with Mother Aya. What's your take on it? Like, what did you think when I'm sure people gave you feedback of like, don't do it, it's so bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really mindful of who I shared with, actually, because I was already feeling really nervous in myself, and that self-doubt was creeping in. And I also, that mother guilt of like, who am I to fly away and put myself under this unknown psychedelic medicine just in the hopes of healing a little bit further. And then, your mind starts going, what if something goes wrong? And I remember getting a friend to Google, like, has anyone ever died from ayahuasca? And so I was quite mindful of who I shared with. I did share it with my best friend, who I love, who is very scientific and not spiritual at all. And she did start to say, oh, have you heard of all the things that have gone wrong? And I had to stop her there. And I said, look, only positive thoughts, please, because I don't want anything negative in my psyche when I'm going into this medicine. I was doing the protocol. You have to eat really healthy. You can't watch anything scary or negative, because everything gets sucked into your psyche. And I truly, truly believe that. And now, since cutting out a lot, since the medicine and cutting out a lot of that negative influence, you can really see the difference. And now, even if I have the TV on for the kids and a news ad comes on, I'm like, oh gosh, like that's jarring to the system now, because my energy is so clean. But yes, back to the medicine. So I walked in, it was a 3-day ceremony, and we did the medicine for 3 nights, and each ceremony was about 5 hours. So it's about 15 hours of journeying with the psychedelic. And obviously I can't share 15 hours of visions and downloads and purging and all of that. But there are a few key things that I do want to share, and I think that will be really beneficial for the listeners and anyone who's thinking of doing it, because it is a medicine that you really need to feel called to. It's not something that you should just go do for the sake of it and for a good time.
Because it probably will not be a good time if you do that. There's like you're talking about, there's the protocol before leading up to journeying, that you have to cleanse your body both physically, spiritually, emotionally, to even be prepared. And people that don't do that tend to have more challenges in their journey. And so it's not like, I don't know, taking like, is it like, it's not like one of those upping drugs. It is very much, you're going into the corners of your psyche that you probably don't want to go to.
Yes,
and it
absolutely.
brings it all up.
Yeah, so for those who aren't familiar with the medicine, it is for me, in my terms, it was a form of having a conversation with your higher self in some points. It was a form of reducing the veil so that you could actually see your subconscious and what's stored in there, because, how we were talking about how I was in the masculine and that was so unconscious. I wanted to see more of what I was unconscious about that was holding me back in my life, right? And so the medicine, I took the first little cup of the medicine, and instantly I was in, I was in the psychedelic experience. And I've heard that's not very common. It takes some time, sometimes even 2 cups. And I was getting the message from the medicine that like I was ripe for the picking. I've done so much work on myself leading up to this, to peel back the layers, and it showed me that I was ready. And she started the clearing of my system. So they clear on a mental, physical, emotional level. So they go through all your body systems. And I could just, like, my whole body, I'd started with just my right hand shaking. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then within half an hour, my whole body was writhing on the bed and I was sweating, and I could just feel the medicine working through my system, just clearing out everything that was ready to be fully released. I'd done the hard work of it, and now it was just like clearing it out for me. And it feels horrible. You hear people talking about it's like the worst night of your life. And it was. The first 2 nights were the worst night, but it felt almost, I liken it to like when you're pregnant, right? And you feel so sick, right? Because of that HCG hormone going through your system. But it's for a good reason. So you're glad that you feel sick because the hormone's strong to carry the baby, right? It felt like that. I felt like the medicine was going through me, and it felt horrible, but I knew it was for my highest purpose. And so my human was like literally shaking my head. No, I can't do this. But my soul and the medicine was shaking my head this way. It was like, you asked for this.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to pause there because I feel like there was so much in that. One disclaimer I do want to make is that we are not advocating people to do plant medicine in any regard. And I actually want to point out something that you mentioned was that you've done a lot of work prior to this. So you've worked with coaches, you've done the practices that are required. You did a silent retreat. Like, there's so many things that you have done for yourself on your healing journey to prepare you to a point where plant medicine was the next right step for you. It was a soul calling. What I don't know, I have trouble with people that I have trouble understanding. People that constantly go from one plant medicine journey to another, because for me, it's almost like, where's the integration, right? So I've done plant medicine a couple of times, and they were like pretty far in between. And the following like 6 months or even more was all about integration. You're like upgrading on a cellular level. And yeah, I just feel like that's really an important note to make, is that you had done a lot of work prior to this so that you were ready to go. And I love how you compared it to being pregnant and having morning sickness, because I did not have that insight when I was pregnant with either of my kids. I did not feel good. I'm like, why do I have this?
Well, trust me, that first night taking the medicine, I said to myself, why would anyone do this? Because it's like your fears and your limiting beliefs and every childhood like thing that happened to you feels, you're feeling it times 1,000, right? You have to feel it to heal it. So it's coming up, and it's not like, medicine is just purging out of you. It's like you're feeling this. It feels so intense. I remember at one point it took me back to when I was 8, in my bedroom, and it showed me a vision of me feeling so lonely, and that feeling of loneliness just encapsulated me. It was like complete darkness, and it felt so scary, right? And that's a big thing. That's one of my core. I feel like when we are born, we come into this life with core wounds that we are here to heal, right? And I do believe that was one of my core wounds, the loneliness and the feeling like I don't fit in, and the feeling like I don't belong and I'm not good enough, that intense feeling of loneliness. And I do believe that life will give you experiences to show what you need to heal, and it'll trigger those wounds, right? It'll pick at those wounds until you're ready to face it, feel it, and then release it and choose a different story for yourself. So that was one like really intense moment within the medicine. But then also there's beautiful moments. I saw my daughter Indy, who's 3 now. I spoke about her before, the one sent to test me. And the medicine showed me that she was my grandma in a past life. And, you know, it comes with this deep sense of knowing as well. It's like, oh, she's just visioning, it's just psychedelic. But the medicine comes with this deep sense of trust and knowing that this is truth, right?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and so I just saw her, and it showed me this, and then it gave me this complete feeling of awe and wonder, and just we were chasing butterflies through a meadow, and I my face was all lighting up, and I just have never felt that sense of awe in my life ever before. But coming home and seeing her after the medicine, I felt the awe, and now every time I'm with her, I just feel so alive. Both of my children, I feel so alive, and I can be with them so much more now because I've cleared whatever I needed to in order to fully be there and be present with them.
Yeah, I remember you sharing that, and that is so huge. That is so huge. I remember when Dan did his first journey, he came back with very similar, energetic shift, where before we were having a lot of challenges with my daughter, Aaliyah, and he just came back with so much compassion about what she needed. It's like the medicine told him, no, when she acts like this, it just means this. What she's calling for is this. What she needs is more play. What she needs is more affection. And he just came back just so different. And it was startling to me because I hadn't journeyed at that point. He was the first to go. And I was like, what medicine can do that?
Yeah.
Because he's a masculine male who is a bit more old school with things. He's more traditional than I am, and in terms of parenting and everything. So he was a lot more firm and rigid with things, whereas I was not. I'm more feminine, and every woman I would guess is a little bit more like that. And he changed. He changed, and it has been a journey since. But I remember when he came back with that realization. So I think this medicine does have the potential to completely change your life.
I truly believe it gives you what you need. I think you can't go in wanting all these things because it's going to just give you what you need in this moment, in this season of life. And for me, it showed me because my Indy's daycare is literally on the back of our house, right? And the medicine showed me working away in my house, thinking that this work is so important, when it showed me that she's over there by herself, and the most important, not by herself, at daycare, and the most important work you can do in this lifetime is be there for your children. And so I came home and I immediately took her out of daycare an extra day a week. I can't take her out fully because I still have to work, right? This is the modern age as well. But I took her out of daycare an extra day a week, and we have a special Mummy Indy Day now. And so it's just, and it doesn't feel like a chore. It feels like I'm so excited for our Mummy Indy Day.
That's so incredible. And to think that you committing to this journey has now completely changed her childhood and her perception of her value to her mother. Because I've been so conscious of that, and I've shared multiple times on the podcast, so we won't get into it, just about how differently I have parented Luca to Aaliyah because I didn't know any better. And I was in survival. I was newly separated. I was so focused on my career and my PhD that I was holding on to every piece of that identity as I could now as my relationship was falling apart. And I sacrificed that time with her. And I always say I don't regret anything I've done in my life. And I've made a lot of mistakes, a lot. That's the only one that I think actually matters. Is if I could go back in time to change one thing, it would be I would have spent more time with Aaliyah when she was really small.
Yeah, because you realize how quick it goes as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.